Welcome on into another episode of Nate Hit the Foul Pole. I'm your host, Zack Goodman, along with Matthew Pine, and our guest, Jack Graham, the GM of the Aberdeen Ironbirds. How you doing today, Jack?
I'm wonderful. It's good to be here, guys. It's a great way to wrap up my week.
Sounds awesome. Yeah, so we just have 8 questions for you. Just going to go over some, day-to-day stuff with the Aberdeen Ironbirds and, the Baltimore Orioles as a whole. So,
Sure.
What's your experience been like? Your new GM, what's that been like so far?
It's been wild. I am very lucky to be in the position that I'm in. I came into the Ironbirds a little bit over 3 years ago, almost 3.5 years ago. I worked under Matt Slatus, who has a tremendous amount of experience in the industry. He was our GM for 3 years. He came to us from a Major League Spring Training facility. He ended up leaving to go back to a Major League Spring Training facility. He's now the president and GM of the Fit Team Ballpark of the Palm Beaches. And during that time, I got a tremendous amount of experience from him, and I got to learn all of the parts of the business. So it was great to learn from him, and it's been that much easier transitioning to GM since I got a lot of experience in a lot of different areas. And in the fall, I got to close out the season as GM. I took us into the off season, and obviously, due to current circumstances, it's a little bit different than a normal first year as a GM would be, but I'm incredibly proud of my staff and our efforts to communicate with our fans and to keep everything on the right track and to keep a positive attitude. And it's great as a new GM to have a staff that has been here, and for them to know me and for me to know them. Not everyone is so lucky to have a team around them that they help to build.
Yeah, for sure. It's been great so far.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
So take us through maybe, Jack, the day in the life of Jack Graham, of a minor league GM.
Sure. Well, I've always been a big proponent of and supporter of the idea of servant leadership. And for those who don't know, servant leadership, or at least to me, means enabling those who are underneath you to succeed. It's something that I've learned from successful baseball coaches, successful leaders and bosses that I've had, people who I've seen in the industry who have had success. And so every day, no matter what day it is or whether we're in season or out of season, my day and my goal is entirely surrounding enabling my staff to succeed, whether it's in ticket sales, sponsorship, entertainment, marketing, merchandise. My goal every day is to come to work and ask how I can enable them to succeed. And to the best of my ability, say yes as many times as I can. So that's an overarching view, but from a day-to-day standpoint in the off season, it's a lot of planning and meetings and discussions, looking at the numbers, looking at where ticket sales are. How can we promote the team better? What are we getting ready for the following season? In season, it's a lot about making sure that the fan experience is as high quality as possible from the moment that they enter the stadium with their ticket to the finding their seat to getting in line for a hot dog, making sure that they get their season ticket holder gift at the ticket services window, making sure that the stadium is clean, both when they arrive and after they've left, making sure that we're the best family fun entertainment venue in our community that we can possibly be. And there's a lot that goes into that, but like I said, I've managed to get some experience and see how to do it right, and also sometimes how not to do it right, and adjust from there.
Yeah, so something, a lot of people may not know about you is you were drafted as a catcher by the Orioles in 2013. Yeah. What's that path kind of been like from player to GM?
It's one that not a lot of people get, and I think that fortunately has given me an advantage. There are people who come up through player development systems as players, and maybe they continue to pursue that, and there are other people who maybe they get done playing baseball at an early age, or they never played at all, and being able to meld the two worlds has really been, I think, helpful to my progress. I have a great relationship with the Baltimore Orioles because a lot of the people who are there, I played when they were there administering the minor leagues, and I have a good relationship with players because they understand that I know what it's like to ride the bus for a whole minor league season. And it's awesome to be able to look at the experience both from a player perspective, from a fan perspective. I think we're all fans, and from a front office perspective, a business perspective. So I learn something new every day, but being able to have those two worlds collide is always really fun.
Yeah, for sure. But last year, we talk about minor league players, and obviously Lee Richmond, the #1 overall pick, came to Aberdeen, and it was a big thing. What was that like for you and the rest of the Ironbirds front office?
It was awesome. When we drafted him, and when we got the first overall pick in 2018, unfortunately the Orioles were so bad that they got the first overall pick. Unfortunately for them, we were really excited. I think everyone's seen the video of when the New Orleans Pelicans drew the first overall pick in the NBA lottery, and they realized they were going to get Zion Williams. It felt a lot like that when they picked Lee Richmond, and we realized we were getting the #1 prospect in baseball to come to Aberdeen. I can remember it was, I think, July 23rd. We were all in the office, and I got a call from the Orioles. Hey, Adley's going to come. He's going to be there on Friday night for the game. And we all were just thrilled. And, we're thrilled because he's a great player, and we wanted to see him, and we're all fans of the team, and we want them to succeed. But in the following 72 hours, we sold 1,000 tickets from people all over Maryland, because it was his first game in Maryland. It made huge waves. We sold tickets as far west as West Virginia, as far north as New York. 1,000 people purchased tickets who had not purchased tickets because they didn't know Adley was going to come. So it was really fun. It made a huge impact on our business, which obviously is my job, but it made a huge impact in the community because people are so excited about the next wave of young Orioles superstars.
Yeah, Matt and I obviously were both there for that night. It had a different kind of buzz to it, very electric, and a very fun experience for sure. But do you think that this year's #2 overall pick will be treated the same way by fans? Kind of see the same response.
I think that there's two sides to that story. Side number one is the current circumstances we're in. There's only going to be 150 guys picked in the draft this year. It's going to be 5 rounds. There's going to be 30 picks in each round. And that Orioles #2 pick will be heavily scrutinized because there's frankly not much else to focus on. If it's not Spencer Torkelson, we will... he might not be as well publicized because that's obviously the guy that everyone thinks can go #1 to Detroit. If Detroit for some reason passes, he'll still make waves. He'll still come and make a big impact from a player perspective, from a media perspective, from a future thoughts perspective. But it's hard to say how somebody who's not Spencer Torkelson, who gets picked 2nd overall by the Orioles, will be received because, for better or for worse, baseball fans tend to look at that #1 guy, whether it's Bryce Harper or Steven Strasburg or Manny Machado or whoever. Not Manny Machado, he wasn't first, but you know what I'm saying.
So maybe, Jack, talk about the relationship specifically that the Ironbirds have with Aberdeen and maybe Harford County as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those who are joining us from outside of the Maryland community, outside of the Harford County community, the name Cal Ripken Jr. still might ring a bell. Cal grew up in Aberdeen, born and raised Harford County boy. His mom still comes to every single game, still lives in the house he grew up in. And Cal came back from being one of the greatest shortstops to ever live in the big leagues to the very next spring opening a minor league baseball team in his hometown. And it was such a tremendous watershed moment for the minor league baseball world, for the community, for Aberdeen specifically. And people really took ownership of the team emotionally. In a way that other minor league teams, I don't know if they have that relationship. People really feel strongly about the Ironbirds. And sometimes I have to hear about that because they feel like we're not doing something that we should be doing. But I always take that as constructive criticism because it means that they care. If they stop giving me criticism, that means that I've failed and that I have lost them. So anytime that somebody wants to tell me something, give me some feedback, give me some criticism, I'm here for it because it means they still care. They still want to come out. They still want this team to be a big part of their community. And so that's important. I think secondly with that is the relationship we have with businesses and civic organizations and our municipal partners in Harford County. Our business partners are some of the biggest parts of our business. You look at our field, Leidos Field at Ripken Stadium. We have a great relationship with Leidos. They're great partners. They're a big part of this community. They're one of the biggest employers in this community. So when people ask, why does a defense contractor want to have the naming rights partnership to your building? It's not because they want to sell you missiles. It's because they want to sell you on the way that they interact with this community. and they're great partners, and I could not ask for a better naming rights partner. And it's true of a lot of our other partners, UMUCH, the hospital, who are full of heroes who are saving lives right now. You've got APGFCU, who are serving the community as a major banking institution during a critical time for a lot of people's finances. And you've got all sorts of other businesses. You may have seen we just signed deals with Burger King and with Jimmy's Famous Seafood and with a handful of other businesses who make an impact in Harford County and in the greater Maryland community. So those business partners are big. The nonprofits who we work with to get them free tickets for underprivileged citizens in the community, the municipal partners who help us to advance our initiatives within the community from a government perspective, all of those people are integral to our success, because if any one of those blocks falls out of the wall, the whole thing collapses.
Yeah, and I think people kind of underestimate, how much of a role minor league baseball teams do play into a community. So I think that's really awesome. And maybe to a good segue to my next question, which would be, what are some of the best experiences, most rewarding experiences you've had in your position with the community?
Yeah, well, it's always great to play Ironbirds games, and every year for the last 18 years, we've played 38 Ironbirds games. But some of the things that have made the biggest impact for me personally at Ripken Stadium and with the Ironbirds have been some of those community partnerships. I'm involved with Harford Family House, and Harford Family House is the nonprofit in Harford County that deals with dealing with the homelessness crisis in Harford County. And some people, even from Harford County, don't know that there are homeless people here, and they bring awareness to it. They raise money for it. And so having an opportunity in the position that I'm in to get involved with Harford Family House or the Boys and Girls Club or the Rotary, or even just interacting with our municipal partners at Aberdeen City Government has been tremendous, because you get to have an impact at baseball games, family fun, entertainment, all that's important. But making sure that you're part of the community, that's been the part that's made the biggest impact on me. I knew the baseball, I knew the tickets, I knew the cotton candy, I knew the fireworks. Now I get to know the community part. That's been big for me personally.
So as a bit of a wrap up for you, Jack, I guess, most Orioles fans know like the Trey Mancinis, the Lee Richmonds of the world who, played for the Ironbirds. Who were some of the more unsung heroes that have played for them in recent years?
Sure. Well, I think that a few guys come to mind. You've got guys who succeeded on the field, like Toby Welk or Willie Yon. Kyle Stowers was a high draft pick who made a big impact. As recently as 2017, Ryan Mountcastle was an Ironbird. Yeah. Hard to believe. And those guys are making impact higher in the organization, even in the big leagues. And so the baseball part is cool. But you also, when you look at a guy who's contributing in the minor leagues, baseball is a spectator sport. It's about the fans. And so you look at guys who make an impact by interacting with fans. A guy who jumps out to me is Luke Ringhofer, who he was always there to sign an autograph or take a photo, hang out with a fan. You see guys like Jalen Ferguson, who came in 17, 18 years old, his first assignment to Aberdeen. He's been with us for a couple of assignments, and the fans love him. They support him. He hustles like crazy. The guys who make an impact on and off the field are big. And every Ironbird, it's our goal to have them come in to Aberdeen. Usually it's their first or second place that they've ever played professionally. And we want to help them to understand that it's more than just a game. It's a spectator sport that's about the fans. And I hope that they get as much out of being in Aberdeen as we get out of them being in Aberdeen. So that's always the goal.
Yeah, absolutely. All great points. Is there anything we can plug for you, Jack, maybe where fans can get tickets for the Ironbirds?
Keep an eye on the news. Keep an eye on ironbirdsbaseball.com. Keep an eye on our social media. Right now, we are obviously concerned about what's going to happen in 2020 with our season. We're aware that the baseball season might not look the way that it has in the past. But if we come out of this thing with one lesson in mind, it's to not take things for granted, not take our community partnerships for granted, and that hopefully when it's time, people will be twice as hungry for baseball as when we went into it. But I appreciate you guys having me.
Yeah, well said.
Thanks for coming on.
Thanks so much for your time, Jack.
Have a great day. I'll talk to you later.
All right, appreciate it.
Bye.
So that was our interview with Jack and Zach. You know, all the credit in the world goes to you for getting them on.
Well, Matt, you've done a lot in the past for us, so I felt like I had to get one of my own on here. And yeah, Jack's great, and I worked for Jack for 2 years, and he's a fantastic boss, a fantastic guy, and he does a really good job. And working for the Ironbirds and helping them win a lot of games. And last year he almost led them to a playoff race, so he's done a really great job. And glad to have him on.
Yeah, and I think he gave great insight into what it takes to be a minor league GM. It's not just about the play on the field; it's really about the community and community partners. And I think he explained that very well. So
yeah, it's definitely not the same kind of job as a major league GM. He's not the Billy Beans of the world who's trying to construct a Moneyball roster. He's not doing that, but he does a lot of things that are more minor league centric, and it really gives a good insight on how a minor league team operates. So. That was a great interview. I enjoyed having him on.
Do want to get to a couple of comments before we get into our next segment. Our good buddy Jordan Katz checking in. What it do, baby? Hey, Jordan, how you doing, man? Glad to have you along. And this question comes from Justin. Sorry, Justin, we couldn't get this question into Jack. We just, we were limited on time. But he wants to know if Adley was, as beautiful in person as he is on pictures. I can't confirm that. Jack, we'll have to send that question along to him later on, but
also cannot confirm. It's a judgment.
It's in the eye of the beholder, as they say.
Yeah.
Moving on to our next segment, we wanted to kind of keep with the Ironbirds theme and maybe look at what contributors. If we do have a minor league season this year, what contributors would be at Aberdeen? And start us off, Zach. Who do you think?
Well, I think Gunnar Henderson is the first clear guy that you look at as going to be the guy who's going to contribute. I think we'll see a lot of him at shortstop, maybe some of him at third. He's going to be a middle of the order guy. He did pretty well in the Gulf Coast League. He didn't do as well as probably many expected, but he's a high school guy, so we temper our expectations a little bit for those guys. He's probably going to hit a lot of home runs. He has, some good power. I don't think the pitching is going to be that much of a difficulty, coming from Aberdeen, or coming from the Gulf Coast League to Aberdeen. I don't think it's going to be that different. So he should be, really fun. I'd love to hear some other names you've got in mind, but I think Gunnar Henderson is the clear, most exciting guy, the guy people are going to show up for.
A guy I look at, and I actually wrote an article on this last year for Utah Street Report, a guy by the name of Mason Yanvrin. And, your stereotypical Orioles fan might not know the name because he was kind of a lower round draft pick. And he went to Central Missouri, which is not obviously a big-time program. But he has an 80 grade speed. He's the fastest player in the organization. And, they clocked him from home plate to first base in under 7 seconds. It's just absurd, or whatever it was. And he's just a guy that I really look out for. And, with that speed, he doesn't necessarily have to be a world beater at the plate. He could just, rely on that tool and, help his tools could help him move along in the Orioles system quickly. So,
yeah, Janford did come to Aberdeen a little bit at the end of the year last year, and we got to see him bat kind of in the 9-hole, play a really good center field. He has excellent range, some of the best I've seen out of any minor league player that I've seen come through Aberdeen. But yeah, definitely a bottom of the order guy who's going to kind of, just steal bases. He'll get on base a lot, maybe set the table for some of the top of the order guys to drive him in. I think that, Janvron's got a really high ceiling as far as, his tools go, because he is such a toolsy player. He's got the fielding, he's got the arm, he's got the range and the speed. Janvron's definitely a great pick. Another guy I really look at is Daryl Hernandez, the Orioles' 5th-round pick in 2019, a guy I'm super excited about. There was a video of him, smashing balls off a tee today. I don't know how excited you can get about tee work, but, his swing is really nice. He's projected to stick it short, unlike Gunnar Henderson. So that's why we'll probably see Gunnar, at third a little bit more this year, and Hernandez at shortstop. And his bat might come along to be, have some decent power, gap to gap. And, I think he's going to hit pretty well too.
Yeah, and I think our Orioles group chat was talking about him a little bit, yesterday, and saying he's a guy that you could really see take that step forward in 2020. And I think some video, surfaced, and he was hitting off a tee, like you said. And Francisco Lindor comp, that's probably a little bit over anxious, but he's got the tools to do it. So he'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, and anybody obviously who gets drafted this year, and it's going to be 6 picks for the Orioles, but we're going to see a lot of those at Aberdeen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if a season does play out, so you're going to look for an Austin Martin or a Casey Martin or whoever comes along in this system. Justin says, what contributors will be at Aberdeen this year if there is a season? Torque after we draft him. I mean, maybe Torque. I know Jack Graham just said that Torque is expected to go 1-1. I think that's what we've kind of been following all draft season. Nobody really expects us to get Torkelson, but in the off chance that the Tigers do take Lacey, then Torque is obviously an option. I think he'd definitely be probably the biggest contributor to Aberdeen this year.
Yeah, I know you mentioned guys like Kyle Stowers and Zack Watson that you got to see firsthand. So it'll be interesting to see if they either return to Aberdeen or maybe they move on to one of the higher A affiliates.
Yeah, for those two, I think the reason they would return to Aberdeen is the fact that they didn't, hit the ball out of the ballpark a lot. They weren't the best players in the team. They were high draft picks, 3rd and 4th round. So I do expect them to maybe return for just a little bit, maybe a few weeks. A lot of guys don't move up as quickly. And especially right now, we just don't know how, quickly guys move throughout the system. So those are two guys I could definitely see back. On the pitching side, maybe a Dan Hammer is some guy who would return, who, I thought was pretty good last year, had a little bit of success. But, obviously the Aberdeen roster is very unfinished, and there's going to be a lot of interesting stuff that goes on with it. I noticed the other day that Brady Rodgers, the former Astros pitcher, is currently listed on the Ironbirds roster, and I don't know if that will change, but that could be another interesting guy that could be pitching there. It seems a little low for him.
Well, I mean, you talk about like some failed draft picks like Mark Appel and Brady Rodgers, guys like that. It does happen. They either lose their stuff or they get injured or whatever the case may be, and they got to work their way back up. So just kind of
and I would advise anyone who's really interested in the draft to come go to an Aberdeen game or two, because you will get to see a lot of guys not only in the Ironbirds but on the opposing teams. I got to see Riley Green and a couple other of the high draft picks last year. I believe Andrew Vaughn came through. So guys like that you get to see firsthand and play locally. So definitely come out to a game and see some of the draft guys.
I remember getting to see Greg Jones steal a few bases.
Yeah.
That was kind of fun.
Yep, and the Phillies shortstop, I can't remember his name right now, but he was through there as well. So definitely a lot of high guys, top 100.
Was it Alec Boehm? He's a third baseman.
No, it was not him.
Okay.
It was their most recent draftee in the first round this year, but Bryson Stott.
That's the guy.
Yeah. So Bryson Stott, he put on a show. I think he went 3 for 4 like all 3 days he was here. So it's definitely exciting to see a lot of these guys come through.
Yep. Then obviously we wanted to touch on as we wrap up the podcast. Zach, we just want baseball. Bottom line, I think we're kind of in the similar boat here with the proposal, but basically just to lay it out for you, if you're not aware, it was reported that the players were none too happy with the owners. They had agreed to a 50% prorated salary cut for the 2020 season if they were to have baseball. And the owners kind of came back and said, yeah, it's probably going to be more like 70 to 80%. And we heard many players be outspoken about that and, not accepting the deal. So what are your thoughts on that, Zach?
Well, I got to be honest, I do like 50%. I think that's fair. If you play 82 games, it's not quite half, 162, but I think 50% is pretty fair. I did like that agreement. I think that the owner should have upheld that agreement, and now they're pushing 70, 80%. We'll see what it comes out to. I think that's far too much. I don't agree with that. But I do, I look at it this way. I think both sides are being very stubborn, and I don't agree with what either side is really doing. The owners, it's the millionaires versus the billionaires, and the owners are being extremely stubborn and not wanting to pay them much when they could. And the players, they want their full salary. Guys that might be getting paid $35 million a year still want all of that. I do look at it on the side of the minor league players. I really want them to get paid, and I feel for the guys who won't get paid the $400 a week. And I hope that more teams like the Twins step up and pay their minor leaguers throughout the entire year.
Yeah, I think you really only saw that with the Oakland A's and the Angels, especially. It's, cutting some scouts, cutting a lot of players, which every team did, but not paying the minor leaguers. That's kind of rough, and that doesn't really instill confidence if you're in that organization and you want to stick in that organization. So
yeah, for sure. And I do want to make a note on what you just said about the cutting players, because there is turmoil all over the baseball world right now about the cuts. Some 1,000 guys might get cut over the next few days. This is a normal procedure, and I think a lot of people are making it out to be something a lot worse than it is. This is something that usually happens after spring training, but teams did not get the chance to do this year. So now they're doing it in late May. Obviously, I never want to see any minor league guys get cut, but this is normal procedure. Nothing to get too, freaked out about, but that seems like that's happening right now.
Yeah, definitely a good point. And I guess my thing here is when the proposal is, it's kind of rough because the players that had already agreed to 50%, I feel like they kind of felt like they were being blindsided when the owners came back. And I get it. I mean, I really get it from their perspective. It's tough. Obviously, we just want to have baseball. And I'm kind of more in the players' camp on this end, even if it is, you're still millionaires. You're making much more than the average Joe. So.
Yeah, and I can see that side for sure. I tend to, not really take one side at all because I look at it as, none of it's really good at all. None of this arguing about salary agreements. I don't really think any of it's good for baseball. So I don't really want to take a side on owners or players. But I do look at it as just like you do. I want baseball back. It's getting to the point where the NBA has just announced that July 31st will be their start date. The NHL is going to jump into a playoffs pretty soon. So it's, the La Liga in, England is going to come back now. So we're starting to see sports come back, and it feels like MLB is just kind of at a standstill here. So, it is what it is. I don't know if we'll have a season this year. I would put the odds at maybe 50 or 60% at this point. I'd like to hear what your thoughts on the odds are.
I mean, I would say it's less than 50-50 at this point, but that can change at any moment, especially if the owners kind of turn around. Do want to get to a couple comments, though. We have Justin in here. He's saying owners need to stop being cheap. They can afford to pay the players, even with reduced revenue this season. And he's right, Definitely a good point, especially with those TV contracts. Jordan Katz comes in here and he says, players only have so many years of their bodies being good enough at baseball to make money from it. I mean, yeah, that's a valid point.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And especially, you look at a guy like Mike Trout, especially. This is one of the greatest players in baseball history. Mm-hmm. And we're now looking at a whole year of no Mike Trout. And he doesn't get to put up the stats, that, Babe Ruth did, or whoever you want to compare him to, Mickey Mantle, or whoever it is. Trout doesn't get to put up the stats. He's going to have a less year. He signed that lifetime contract, and now he doesn't have to have a part of that. So that's definitely disappointing for the franchise guys that, are going to miss a year.
Jordan also gets in here. He says, there's like no other profession where you have to quit when you turn 35 being an athlete. I mean, that's a very good point. Yeah, definitely.
Unless you're a NFL running back.
Yeah, three-year lifespan for a running back. But yeah, I mean, another point too is like with the virus threat, like if you're asked to leave your families and you could get coronavirus and you're taking an 80% pay cut, I mean, that's a lot to ask, especially.
Yeah, it is a lot to ask, but I really do think that MLB, and this is not only for this, but in a lot of ways should follow what the NBA does, because I think the NBA does everything so well. Same with the NFL, do everything so well in, laying out these salary negotiations and, helping players, be safe and everything like that. And that's why the NBA right now is already coming back in, a little over a month. So, that I think that's the way we should look at it, as we should try to follow the models of the other teams right now and just get back as quickly as we can.
Bottom line, baseball, figure it out. We want baseball. We want it now. But obviously, there's some extenuating circumstances that may not happen. So just got to wait and see.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. I think, is that it, Zach? Anything else to cover here?
Not much else to cover, but this next week is going to be really interesting as far as the negotiations go, and I think by the end of next week, we're probably going to have a better picture of what baseball looks like for this year.
Yeah, very well said. As always, you can subscribe to us on YouTube. We're trying to build up our YouTube a little bit, doing live shows weekly, and putting some other segments on there. We might do another game rewind. We may do some more extra innings as well. As always, you can find us on SoundCloud or Google Podcasts, iTunes, or Spotify. Really appreciate if you guys would leave us a review on iTunes and give us that 5-star review. It helps us move up in the rankings, and we will talk to you next week.